Hi, parents. My name is Rachel Gooch. I am the head of school at Scale House School. Scale House School is a classical Christian tutorial for homeschooling Latter-day Saints. We have different programs that we're offering this year. Arete is our Honors Living Science program, and it is split up into two schools. We have the lower school and the upper school. The lower school is for grades 2nd through 5th. This video is going to focus on our upper school, and which is 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th grades. And we want to go over both student and parent expectations for students enrolled in Arete who are in these upper grades. First of all, why does Scale House School exist? I do want to say that I'm not in it for the money. I'm not making money. I have spent a ton of money, thousands and thousands of dollars to get this program going. And while my own students have definitely benefited from the program, if it were up to me, I would just focus on my own homeschool and not worry about cultivating academic peers, although I really think it is a huge benefit to my students. They desperately need academic peers. But I received a prompting from the Holy Ghost uh, several years ago, actually. And it took me some time to understand what it was that I was being asked to do. And out of that request and that prompting, I have been working on building up Scale House School as a tutorial. This is our second year, and it is a nonprofit. All tuition goes to teacher compensation, and I do not really care for the traditional co-op model. So um, this is what I have put out there, and I'm hoping that we can find more families that share the same vision. Basically, our main purpose, like I said, is to cultivate serious academic peers. I would say that's something that the homeschool community lacks in comparison to the public school. We want to teach our students how to study to prepare them for AP and college courses. And we believe that through greater knowledge and understanding and wisdom and learning, that our students can become more like God by learning about his creation. And we want to help build the kingdom of God by building up our students to become capable people in this world that is desperately in need of capable and good people. And of course, we want to help our students prepare for the second coming, which is definitely related to building the kingdom of God. And I just wanted to point out the scripture, which I find very applicable, that if a person gains more knowledge and intelligence in this life through his diligence and obedience than another, he will have so much the advantage in the world to come. Our Arete program, all of our programs at Scale House School are very selective. We only have so many students per class. In Arete, we do have 7 seats available for each class, although um, we prefer to keep that closer to 6 if we can, but it's always good to have just a little bit of wiggle room. So we have each class only has 7 seats. So here's the upper school at a glance. We have on Mondays, we meet on Mondays through the whole school year from 1 to 3. And the classes that meet with the upper school, we have 6th grade life science, 7th grade physical science, 8th grade earth science, and 9th grade is ASPC. That is accelerated studies in physics and chemistry. That's an introductory physics and chemistry course. And then we have our honors level 10th grade chemistry, which is also to prepare our students for AP chemistry for their 11th year. My son is going to be in that class. He's also taking 3 other AP classes at home. So we are very much interested in everything we can do to help students take AP classes at home and prepare themselves for the test. So the curriculum we have chosen for our upper school is the Navarre Science curriculum that was created by John D. Mays. And he's a science author, but he also was a former engineer, and he's been a longtime teacher at private Christian schools. And he's focused on mastery, that students can have guided practice to answer and understand essential ideas and questions, and to retain that information through cumulative review. That helps the knowledge remain available beyond the next test. He really despises what he calls the cram, pass, forget cycle, where students might just cram for a test. They would pass the test, but then they would forget whatever they crammed 2 weeks later. And then the curriculum tries to integrate connecting science to mathematics, history, language, and then we have the labs. And there's a kingdom of perspective. We also throw in a little bit of apologetics into here. For example, when he's teaching about matter in the physics courses, he'll give examples of things that are not made of matter and things that are. And one is your soul. And we have it revealed to us in the Doctrine and Covenants that everything is made of matter, and that our our spirit is matter. It's just far too fine for humans to be able to detect. That kind of thing. So we will have conversations like that occasionally. We also talk about in the book. It'll talk about different kinds of revelation. And he seems to, I believe, he might be Eastern Orthodox. So he has, in general Christianity, they have things called special revelation and general revelation, if I'm getting that correct, those terms. And so they don't believe in personal revelation, that kind of thing. So we will, when those things crop up, we will discuss those as needed to make those to show those differences. But otherwise, the text itself is rooted in Christianity, um, and I find them to be written very well written and engaging. So, but John Mays, he gives a lot of testimonials about from students and teachers who his program really helped. He gives a really touching story of a student who just didn't care about school. She just wanted to pass. She just wanted a passing C. But the problem is with the cumulative curriculum, you can't do that. Like you can't just cram for every little quiz or test and barely get by and still pass with a C, because the information that you're cramming, the quiz itself will have questions about things that you learned about in the beginning of the year, so on and so forth. So it's a really great study strategy. And we have made some tweaks to it. After our first year, we attempted to follow it as he suggested, and we're making some adjustments this year to the study strategy, but it remains to be a cumulative effort. So, one area that I failed greatly in last year was not laying out very clear expectations for both our students and our parents. And I don't want to make that same mistake here again. Last year was kind of just jump in head first. We were building the rails while the train had already started out of the station. So it was kind of a crazy year, but we're hoping to really improve this year and make the program immensely successful. So we want the student to understand the study expectations, and we will go over this on the first week. If your student is in grades 6 through 8, the recommended weekly study is 3 to 5 hours. Grade 9, 4 to 6 hours, and grade 10, 5 to 8 hours. And this is on top of the 2-hour tutorial. I've had parents fight me on this. They didn't want their students to do any homework. And I would argue, if you're just dropping your student off to do science for 2 hours a week, and then you're not having them do anything else, you're keeping your student at an elementary level. If they were to attend a public school or a private school, they would most likely have 5 hours of instruction throughout the week, and then probably another 5 hours of science homework on top of that. So some parents really fought me on this, and they didn't like that. So I want this to be very clear to begin with, because those students didn't do very well. And then they're going to use the RRC study process, and I'm going to go over that in the next slide. They're going to have to review Anki daily, and we also have something called QR flashcards. So John D. Mays, he really recommends that students write out all their flashcards, and writing is so important. Writing is probably the most important skill in science, being able to communicate in written form as best as possible, and to have that be a really sharp skill set. So we really wanted them to write out all the flashcards. But the reality is, some of the chapters have a huge amount of flashcards. And as a board, we decided that we would rather provide digital flashcards that are pre-made for each class, that would cover chapter objectives and vocabulary terms, so the students can spend more time studying the flashcards versus making the flashcards. But we still want them to write a lot. Now, keep in mind, with this program, there is a weekly quiz, and we'll go over that in a moment, a weekly written quiz that takes 30 minutes. But what we're also going to do is have them do what we call QR, or question review flashcards. That will be a system that happens every Monday. So they will definitely still get a lot of writing in through the RRC study process and through their QR flashcards, and by doing the quiz every week. So we're finding a little wiggle room. We're going to go ahead and use these digital cards. And then we also have an online learning platform that the students should check at least twice a week. It's called Moodle, or Moodle Cloud. And then our students need to arrive ready to retrieve and discuss and apply what they learned themselves before they show up to the tutorial. So the tutorial is not the teachers giving you a lecture and then you go home and you just kind of practice what you learned at the lecture. the student has to be willing to independently learn the content themselves. And of course, our sixth graders, they'll need a little more hand holding. But we really want to build this so students become more independent. And so parents are really just there to check up on things. So real quick, let's discuss the RRC study process. It's read, recall, and check. So a student is given a reading assignment. Let's say they have 2 sections of a chapter they have to read. Before they do any in-depth reading, they need to do an inspectional reading where they go through, they skim, they read all of the titles and subtitles, the section headings, they read any chapter objectives or vocabulary that might be associated with that reading, and they study any diagrams, any pictures, and then they're going to go to the heading of each section that they've been assigned to read. Let's say, you might be reading about how landforms are formed. What you're going to do is you're going to take that section heading. They will turn it into a question, like how landforms are formed. Just off the top of my head, they're going to make a question. Then they're going to read that section carefully with that question in mind. And then they are going to close their book, and then they're going to try to recall what they learned from reading that section, and they're going to try to reconstruct the main idea, the process, and the diagram, and use essential vocabulary that they can remember from memory. Excuse me. And so with the book closed, they're going to try their best to remember those things. Sorry, it's late, and I'm trying to do this while my kids are sleeping, so I'm in the dark. Anyway, so they have to try to basically give a really great detailed written narration of that section without using the book. Then they're going to check their work immediately after. They're going to open the book back up. They're going to take a different color pen, and they're going to correct errors in that different color. And then if they have any more questions, they're going to write a precise question, especially if something remains unclear. And then we have another study strategy for very difficult concepts that our teachers are going to be trained in. So like I said, the digital flashcards that are going to be provided by the tutorial for each course, we are using the Anki platform. If you're unfamiliar with Anki, it functions with active recall and spaced repetition. We recommend the students do Anki for 15 to 30 minutes a day. It'll cater the cards to what they are able to recall. So they will retrieve, they're going to start learning the information. It should be information they've already read about, but they're going to retrieve and see the question and try to answer it from memory. And then they'll reveal the answer, and then they will rate it. If they don't know it at all, they're going to click on again. If they were pretty good with answering it, they're going to click on good. So you choose again, hard, good, or easy, and then you repeat. And Anki will schedule difficult cards sooner and mastered cards later. So this really helps with retention. It's an amazing tool, and it's something that I think students, if they really get into the habit of using Anki, they're going to see how much it benefits them, and it's a tool that they will continue to use throughout their academic career. Now, Moodle is our online learning platform. Here, we want students to check it at least twice a week to open the weekly overview. This is where they'll have some supplemental videos offered that can help them any extra credit. This is where they can complete check-ins and submissions and discussions. And parents also have access to the school's parent view, so they can see what's going on Moodle. And this is another thing that parents really fought me on. They also fought me on the flashcards too. For some reason, I don't know if they just didn't want their student to be on a computer at all, but we had students that never logged in. And so this is something that I want everyone to be prepared for before classes start, because I see this as a valuable way for students to gain independence. If they have a question for their teacher, they can communicate it through Moodle instead of saying, "Hey, mom." We want them to become more independent. And I would say I'm pretty sure every school now has some sort of online platform like this that students have to use. So I think it's very good practice. We also are going to teach the students some good discussion etiquette, online discussion etiquette, things of that nature, especially for our younger students that might not have much experience with that kind of thing yet. Okay, so parent expectations. I kind of touched base on this a little bit, but what we expect from our parents involved in the upper school. So first of all, protect your schedule. Science needs to have time. The student needs to have time to do science every day, every school day. And so, and that might help you decide whether or not you want to have them involved in the program. If you are a diehard for all 4 co-ops that take their full day co-ops or something, and your student really doesn't have a lot of time to even what I call keep the home in the homeschool, this might not be a good fit. Uh, if you are involved in too many things and the student won't have sufficient time to do the coursework. So keep that in mind. But also when you're making their schedule for the year, understand they need to have a daily time when they're going to do their science homework, their science studies. And here I want parents to verify Moodle access. Like I said, I don't know if it was the parent or if it was the students, the parents or the students of parents that their students never logged into the learning platform that we used last year. And it would have really helped them a lot. It would have helped, it would have done a lot. But it also is a way for these students to communicate with each other because, like I said, we want them to be academic peers. We want them to engage with each other more than just during the tutorial if possible. So we want parents, we expect you to confirm and verify that your student knows how to log into Moodle, and then check in on the parent view. See, maybe once a week you get on the parent view, you hop on and to see, is your student participating? Is your student asking questions? But just, check in with your student. Have you been on Moodle this week? Okay, and then we want parents to verify Anki access. This is such a great resource. It is so powerful. I see it. I have a high schooler that he's taking 3 AP classes at home this year, and so we're diving in deep, and we're hoping that he can do well on the AP exams in May. And Anki has been such a gift to help him study for that exam. And then one super important thing that we expect from our parents is to check the GroupMe. Um, there's a separate GroupMe group for each course, each class. So let's say the teacher's sick and she couldn't find a sub and has to cancel class the morning of. You need to check your GroupMe. Maybe right when you're dropping your kid off, before you take your foot off the brake, you check GroupMe to make sure that they have class that day. And we will have protocols set in place if a child does get dropped off and he doesn't have a phone. Who are the people that he's supposed to talk to get help? Because since this happened, these classes happen at residential homes. The students should be okay with asking anyone at either house, which they're just down the street from each other. If there's no one at one house, they need to go to the other house, and they need to wait there. If no one's home, they need to wait there. But you know, if that kind of thing happens, I need parents to take responsibility for paying attention to the GroupMe. It's also a place to ask questions to the teacher, and don't mute it. Really, it's few and far between that even there's anything posted on that group, on those groups. So it's not like it's going to clutter up your GroupMe. And then I want parents to support the work. And by that, I mean, I had a lot of parents fight me so much on the program itself. And again, this is completely my fault. They were not prepared. They basically, a lot of them, um, wonderful people, they heard there was a science program and it was run by a Latter-day Saint. I'm on board, right? But they didn't realize the commitment that was involved. But they also had differing philosophies than I did. Things like, we don't believe in homework. We don't like the word teacher or school. Um, and, I don't think flashcards are great for my student. My student shouldn't have to use flashcards. Things of this nature. Science has nothing to do with writing. My husband and I, we get a good laugh out of that one because he is a bioengineer, and what does he do the most? He's writing all the time. He's constantly writing. And when he was getting his PhD, he was writing all the time. He's writing science papers. He had to write all these reports and all that kind of thing. So writing skills are so important in science and math as well. So I want you to support the work. I had parents that said they didn't want report cards. They didn't like that there were quizzes every week. They didn't like that there were grades and so on. And so you need to realize that that's this kind of program. The students need assessment. They need to see where they're at. They need to understand, how they're doing. And they also don't need to be told by their teacher, okay, you need to study these flashcards, only for the parent to say, oh, don't worry about that. You don't need to do that. So we need you to support the work as much as possible to, don't routinely excuse assigned study. So of course, if a kid's sick or something, they need to make up the work. But to go to blatantly go against the program is just, it's unwise and I think it sends a lot of mixed messages to our students. So the other thing is you need to own the book. I don't care how you get the book, get it used, whatever. But every student needs his or her own required texts, and we actually will expel the student from the program this year if they don't have the book by September 14th. Since some students might be joining kind of late, we understand it might take a few weeks or a couple weeks for the book to show up. We will provide on Moodle the first assigned readings. So if they don't have the book yet, they can at least get on Moodle and read the text there. So we expect a lot from our parents to be encouraging. We definitely don't want parents to feel like they have to teach it at home. Again, we want students, if they don't understand something, we want them to write a question down and post it to a discussion board on Moodle or save it for when the tutorial happens the following Monday. But what we want from the parents is to inspect what they expect and to work with the program. Don't fight it. And I think you would be so wonderfully pleased to see how much your student can learn by following these study strategies. So again, this is a drop-off program, but it's a partnership. You have our student who is to study independently, retrieve ideas, and bring specific questions to the tutorial. The parents and the family, you need to protect the study time, keep the home and the homeschool, and permit access to digital tools. Allow them to get on Moodle, allow them to have Anki on their computer to be able to use Anki independently so they can study those flashcards on their own. And support follow through. If you have questions, contact the teacher if you need to find out, get a direct answer from the teacher, but really support your student in finishing the work. And then through the tutorial, we discuss and demonstrate through as many models and analogies and syllogisms and all sorts of ideas. We're going to practice deeply those 2 hours a week and assess under supervision. We're going to be doing the experiments and the quizzes, the weekly quizzes. It really is such a great program, and I'm really proud of it. I think it could go really far and help a lot of our students, and help mom out too. I know what it's like to have a bunch of kids and they're all at different science levels and how daunting it is to do so many different years of science. So, so I think if this interests you, please check out the website, scalehouseschool.com, and see if it fits your budget, if it fits your time budget, and look into enrollment for your student. So again, the tutorial provides demonstrations, activities, and experiments. One thing I really like about the Navari science curriculum is he differentiates between those things. A lot of homeschool science curricula will say, oh, here's our experiment for the week, but there's no real trials. There's no real measurement. There are no lab reports written. And with Navari, you learn those things, and to qualify as an experiment, you actually have to follow the scientific method. But we want to have the best demonstrations that we can possibly create in our classrooms, memorable scientific phenomena. We want to have great hands-on activities, to create models, have guided practice and collaborative work. And then with our experiments, we want to also provide the best labs that we reasonably can achieve in a home setting, since we do have these classes in private residences. And then, of course, shared access. So I have a really wonderful library of science materials that I have spent a lot of money curating. And so the tutorial is purchasing big ticket equipment, so each family does not have to. Like we have a Van de Graaff generator. Most homeschool moms aren't going to make a big purchase like that, because if their student just uses it once, it doesn't make any sense. It's big, you have to store it, it's expensive, and you also have to maintain it, that kind of thing. And so, but I try my best to get all the cool stuff that that really great science teachers might have in their closets at the public school. So we want the students to have access to those demonstrations and to those science materials. So real quick, if you are new to the program, we are asking for a handwritten writing sample from the student. So this is just for the upper school, not for the lower school. It's just a recent, ordinary, independently written paragraph is good enough, not copied, dictated, or written by the parent. Um, it's basically a baseline to see if the student has legible handwriting, if they can write a coherent sentence, some sort of organization of ideas, and basic grammar mechanics. This is a readiness to prove readiness. And also, if they're doing the handwritten assessments, the quiz every week, I can't have a student in the class who is unable to write a sentence. It's just not going to work that way. It's not fair to the teacher. It's not fair to the classmates to have a classmate that might be functionally illiterate. We just don't have the resources to help special needs students who have such severe special needs, or perhaps they are very behind in their education and they don't have any of those of the 3 R's skill set yet. So this is what I'm checking. So I'm not going to be too harsh on that, but I need to be able to see if your kid can write a sentence. And then, like I said, this pertains to relationship within the class, relationship with the teacher, a relationship of capability. So again, if you're running a tutorial and you have a student over here that can't write a sentence and they're in an honors level tutorial, and then you're trying to help these students that are at the grade level, they're in a good placement, they're able to do the work. And then what do you do with the student that doesn't have that skill set? It becomes, the poor teacher is going to have to basically teach 2 classes, one with a lot of hand holding and one with not as much hand holding. So that is the purpose for that. Now, you would only have to do it one time. If you remain in the program, at the end of the year, when the student receives a report card, they also receive a recommendation from their teacher of whether or not they can continue with the program the following year. And so if you enroll in the program and you stick with it, this is the only time you'd have to submit a writing sample for your student. All right, assessment is part of learning. So let's talk about the quiz. I pulled up one of the quizzes from the ASPC class, the 9th grade class. It has some calculations on here, and it also has a question that's asking for a written response. Excuse me. So these are cumulative, they're timed, and they're handwritten. So again, this is why I need a handwriting sample. I need students to be able to do these quizzes. We understand that when the student first starts with the program, it might be a little shaky ground, and they have to build up towards building up that skill set. I understand that, but they still need to be able to write a sentence or 2. So to answer a lot of these questions, they have to write 2 to 4 sentences. We may check off for spelling, like we will mark spelling wrong. The teacher may or may not take off points for spelling. And also these quizzes hold the greatest weight in the grade. Homework is only about 5%. Now, the homework is important because if you don't do the homework, you're not going to do well on the quiz. That's just the way it goes. But these quizzes are so great, not just because they help with retention and mastery, but they're impossible to cheat on. They just are, or nearly impossible. I guess they could try to copy a neighbor's, but the teacher would maintain looking at, watching them. The teacher stays in the room during the quiz, and so on and so forth. So that does remind me too, I failed to mention on the RRCs in the Commonplace Journal, the students will have to bring their journal every week. And while they're taking the quiz, the teacher is going to inspect that they're actually doing the RRC study system in their Commonplace Journal. So we are going to inspect to make sure that they're reading the text and writing those narrations and coming up with questions and then correcting it. And I'm just going to leave you with a few thoughts. We are ready to enter into the no man's land of learning. David Hicks wrote that the activity of learning takes place in a no man's land between what the student can accomplish and what he may not be able to accomplish. And this fact sets up a creative tension in education to which both the student and teacher must become accustomed to. And so that's David Hicks. I think you can't really see his name there because my face is in the way. And then there's a similar quote from John Stuart Mill, where he says, "A pupil from whom nothing is ever demanded which he cannot do, never does all he can." David Hicks goes on to say, in Norms and Nobility, where this quote comes from, it's an excellent book on classical education. Every person should be reading it if you're interested in being a classical educator. But he says that if a teacher's not interested in entering that creative tension between teacher and student, of asking the student to do more than they currently are capable of doing in that no man's land, then they really shouldn't be a teacher. And so Uh, so, like I said, we're here to challenge your student. Uh, we want to we want to turn them into an academic peer that the other students will be so grateful to have, that they will feel inspired by, that they will feel motivated by, and to feel a camaraderie as well. So I think that's very important in understanding what type of learning environment we aim for. And the last thing I want to just mention is AI and the changing workforce, which might seem a little odd, but I have found that a lot of homeschool moms view homeschooling as a hobby and not as a vocation. It's really easy to listen to very bad homeschool propaganda, which I won't go into right now. But a lot of the bad homeschool propaganda that's out there is there to flatter mom, and it's to um, and mom ends up doing what's right for her instead of what's right for the student. But I want to bring this up because we really need to prepare our students, especially our Latter Day Saint students, for being able to compete in the world that they're going to have to enter into. The traditional corporate structure is a pyramid shape with more entry level junior staff at the bottom. Then you have your managers, senior leadership, and executives. That is the traditional structure, but it's predicted with the AI. With the changes with AI, that structure is going to turn into a diamond shape. You're going to have fewer people in the entry level positions, more managers and specialists, and more senior leadership, and so on and so forth. And so our students need to have great judgment and communication skills. They need to have durable knowledge, um, because even if you think, well, my kid, he's going to, he's an entrepreneur and he's going to have his own company, he's going to be at the top automatically, and so and that kind of thing. And that might be the case. But for a lot of us, that's not the case. Our students will need to gain some experience, some real life experience working for another company before they can really launch something out successfully. I also want to just put in a plug for college. Um, a lot of people, I see it as I see it as a version, to use a very politically incorrect term, of pearl drift, where a lot of moms will poo-poo college because, let's be honest, it's low-hanging fruit. It's a really easy thing to do. There's so much corruption, indoctrination, DEI practices, so on and so forth. It's easy to to dump on college, for lack of a better term. But we're not facing reality, because at the same time, a lot of these homeschool moms that dislike college so much and they don't want their students going there, they also are very obsessed with the idea of leadership. And if you're going to look at statistics, 99% of all representatives and senators, at least I believe, like in the federal government, they've all had a 4-year degree. I think 72% of all executives have at least a 4-year degree. If you are to consider the leaders of our church, there's a lot of degrees there. And I would say the one apostle that did not go to university, if you look at his educational history, I'm talking about Elder Kieran, I would argue that he was at um, classical boarding schools, having a much better education than probably most kids in public school. So anyway, so I see a lot of moms, like I say, they discount college because it's easy to see all the terrible things that are going on in the university institutions. However, I think a lot of times homeschool moms do that not so much because they think college is wrong, but they think they can't really prepare the student for college. And so they kind of just give up on it very early in the student's academic journey. And then when the student says, "Hey, mom, I'm 17, I think I want to go to college," mom panics and is thinking, "You're years behind in math and science. You're not going to pass the ACT. How am I supposed to get into college?" And I find that I feel like that should be something that we fear more than what could happen at the college, more than what could happen in the world at large. I've talked to enough homeschool graduates that are deeply resentful and bitter about their homeschool education, that they are probably our homeschooling's biggest enemies. And then they're also they have a very fragile relationship with their mothers. And I want to change that. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I don't like hearing a homeschool graduate tell me that they didn't know their times tables in high school. I don't like sitting in sacrament meeting and having a man get up and claim that claim with utter shame that he was homeschooled, but assures the rest of the congregation that he would never ever do that to his own kids, and then have the word chuckle in response. you know, I don't like these situations, and but I don't blame them. These homeschool graduates that feel like they were cheated out of an education because mom viewed homeschooling as her own personal hobby, as opposed to a holy calling, a vocation, as being a ministry, a personal ministry for her to minister to her children and to take on the tremendous sacrifice and burden it is to homeschool. It's immense. And you know what? To be quite frank, it's impossible. It's an impossible task without Jesus Christ. It just is. And if you made it this far, I hope you take a look at our tutorial. Go to scalehouseschool.com. Like I said, our Arete program is for grades 2nd through 10th grade. And we also, I'm starting up my Lux program again, but we're going to keep that for lower elementary. And that's a seasonal program, and it's very low cost. Probably most of the cost of the class will go towards materials for those kids. But I do have two sons that will be in the Lux program, and so I want to give it my best for that. But that's just in the fall and the spring, and then we're hoping to start Paideia. That will also be extremely affordable, and it will probably only be twice a month. It will be a writing humanities lab of sorts for young men only. And so uh, more information will be coming about that. I'm not sure if there's enough interest in that, if people can afford it in their schedule, their time frame. Um, but so you can look for that if you're interested in that. You can get on our interest list. I thank you for listening to this presentation. I know I went over a lot of things. If you are already registered for the upper, your students are already registered for the upper school with Arete, welcome. And I hope this video has helped you. If you disagree with me philosophically, I think that's okay, as long as you understand what the program is about and be willing to work with us to help prepare your student for the future and to build up the kingdom of God.